question, is there enough? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
The first thing that comes to my mind is yes, there is enough. And then the second thing is, but we're not identifying the best way to access it.
So that's really interesting, because you're basically encompassing in your answer the range of how people respond to this, right? And the question tends to obviously center on the fact that, well, yeah, there's enough, but yeah, there's also not enough in terms of how people actually enjoy enough. So we have things we have enough of and not enough of. So what is in the not enough column?
I would say the thing is, it's a question of distribution, not a question of quantity. So that if enough is a quantity, is there enough? Then the answer is yes, but it's badly distributed. And every time there's an attempt to redistribute it, whatever it is, resource, wealth, happiness, whatever, it all finds itself back into the same pockets within a relatively short space of time. And I think that's, why that is our challenge. That's how I feel about it.
When you use the word redistribution, it always sounds to me, when I hear that word, like we'll go take it from the people who have it and give it to the people who don't have it. Is that really what we mean?
No. We won't take anything from anywhere. We need to start making it attractive to rechannel the excess resource, whether that's water, whether that's energy, whether that's money, whether that's food. There is an excess. We throw away half the food we grow on the planet, and yet there is starvation in parts of the planet, right? So the question is not, is there enough there? There is, but what there is not enough is the intelligent distribution of it, which would not impact. I mean, I would love to do an actuarial analysis of the planet and say, what if you took everything and kind of redistributed it? And you'd find that there'd be those with vast amounts might have a little less. But I'm not talking about destroying the middle class's comfortable lifestyle. I'm talking about the unfeasible excesses that exist in some parts of the world, in some particular areas of resource and wealth, and it does people no good. I mean, people try to distract themselves to no avail. I mean, you see it all the time. I live in the south of France a lot of the time, and you see in the summer the jumbo jets and the Gulf streams all arrive from the Gulf, and everybody runs around spending as much money as they can, and then they run away again. But they don't seem to be any happier. So, and I'm not being moralistic. I think people should have absolutely as much wealth as they could conceivably, make good use of. But it's that make good use of it, and then there's the frivolous distraction side of life. I mean, people should have fun too, but it's just this. It's this. Anyway, I really do think there is enough, and I think it's badly distributed, and I don't think we redistribute it by making laws. We have to make it obvious to people, and then they will do it. If you want a monkey to come out of the tree, you can chase them around the tree, or you can hold up a banana. And if you hold up the banana, you go, I like that.
That's very interesting, because a lot of the conversations we have are really around incentive. It sounds like what you're talking about is that we don't have the right incentives for wealth to be more enjoyed by more people around the planet.
Yeah, it's like Greta Thunberg's thing. When you're on the top floor of the house and the basement's on fire, that's an incentive. But actually what's happening at the moment is people are living on the top floor saying, well, we're okay up here. But the fire's rising through the building. That's actually what's happening to the planet. We had years of austerity in England. We can't afford public services. We can't afford this. We can't afford that. What is happening during the pandemic is a reverse tax flow. Instead of people working and giving money to the government, they're not working, and the government's giving them money to stay at home and avoid the pandemic. 80% of their salary is called furlough, and it's been going on since March or February, March last year, and
the country hasn't collapsed from all that money either.
No, I mean there clearly is going to be some sort of impact somewhere, but I don't know. There's nobody staggering around the streets starving and doing that kind of thing. I mean, obviously some places there are, but if you look at what's happening. And to my mind, in my old hippie mind, this is the planet telling us, hey, watch this. And we've taken all the rules we had, which was you work, you pay taxes, you borrow money so you can pay the bills, or provide the things that you need because you're working. You therefore have to pay the interest on that. This is the capitalist structure, and I'm not anti-capitalist or anti-communist or any-ism or any of those things. But what I feel is we've been given this remarkable example of how countries can basically pay people to stay at home and watch television and talk on YouTube, and on Zoom and things. And yet this is and I'm talking trillions of dollars have been spent on this. Trillions, I mean, I don't even know where it's coming from. We know that with quantitative easing, they've been printing money and all this kind of thing, but somehow people are driving their cars, people are eating their food, people are suffering because they're confined in their homes with kids, when the kids would rather be out playing. But it's literally a reverse tax flow. It's on an immense scale. It's actually, your net salary is being paid to you basically every month just to stay at home. And I think what it's saying to people is, well, this ought to be demonstrating to somebody somewhere, well, that we can do things in a different way. Bucky used to say, we could pay everybody to do just what they want. We could pay them to, restore the environment, to create great art, to do engineering projects that were there for their own value to society. The money is there, and the technology is there, and the intelligence is there to do it. What is not there is the will, and I think until people begin to react in a way where they resonate with each other and think, okay, I will help my fellow man. Right. It's the old "who is my brother" thing. I think that's where we're going now. Whether this is the first step of many, or a major step which will make people really resonate with the whole thing, I feel this is our war. This is our generation's war, and it didn't involve mass shootings and killings and bombings and nuclear exchanges. It involved a terrible but simple virus teaching us to shape up,
So Bucky Fuller, you met a couple of times, actually, was talking about universal basic income without giving it that terminology in his time.
He was.
Long before we ever came up with that. And, a lot of times these conversations around is there enough at this moment come to, okay, well, we're talking about what there's not enough of. What do we do about it? And I heard you mention, will. And, what is will in a collective basis but agreement, which is why we,
in
this campaign, link that the transition between asking the question, is there enough, and the question of what are we going to do about it, which is the not enough stuff, the things we value the most, the not enoughs. Well, we have to make some sort of new agreement. My question to you is how can we get agreement? I mean, everywhere we look around the world, we are like just at war culturally between the tribes. How do you see a resolution of that, if you do?
That's a huge question. But the thing is that, well, to my mind, it stems from realigning or reconnecting with our own fundamental consciousness. We've grown separate to a huge extent, partly because of our overpopulation. So we compartmentalize ourselves to keep ourselves away from the huge crowds. In the past, the stranger coming to town was welcome as a gift. Showing hospitality to strangers, it was fundamental to a lot of ancient cultures. It was, there are many, many stories of that. Now we have a sense of keeping people apart. How do we get the agreement? I mean, to me, I found people respond to simple, powerful examples of things. If somebody sees somebody doing some amazing thing, the old guy in England that walked around his garden for, he's 100 years, he's just died yesterday actually, but he was an ex-military guy, and he walked around his garden maybe hundreds or thousands of times for charity, and he raised 30 million pounds, right? And he got a knighthood, and the whole country was moved by his example. So I guess what I'd say is how we get agreement is we keep the dialogue going and we set examples and we don't compromise. Well, we compromise as little as possible in demonstrating those examples. Look at Greta Thunberg, who has created a lot of negative people thinking bad things, saying bad things about her, but she doesn't care. She speaks so powerfully. I was in Cambridge 2 years ago, and there was the Kids March on, and it was like the 60s. It was like, and nobody was being violent. There were thousands of children saying, the place is heating up, stop it now. And it kind of moved people. And I guess it's that kind of thing.
So it's more demonstrate than it is teach.
I would say the first stroke is demonstration and promotion of the concept. And you follow up with, and here's how. That's what I would say. If you say, here's how, they go, but what is, I don't believe that, you know, and you get in a dialogue about, well, I don't believe what you're telling me. But if they see something amazing, a friend who was an American military jet pilot, right? And he was on carriers way back in the 60s. And there was a particular kind of aircraft and nobody could get it to fly in neat wing order with the other one. Everyone's saying, it's impossible, it's too powerful, it's too unstable. And he was a very good pilot. He got in the carrier plane, the aircraft, he took off and he got with a guy and he said, you fly, I'll stick to you. And he flew and he stuck to him and they did everything together. And from that point on, everyone could do it. But they'd been trying for days to try and to line up and match up on each other. And he said, it's a sort of, it's a combination of determination, willpower, and acceptance that these things can be done, you know. And then once they accepted them, then they're the norm. Breaking the 4-minute mile, Bannister did it, then now everybody does it. You know, it's like, it's like, and yet that went, you know, we haven't evolved into some super species since that time. So I think you lift people's heads and say, look, you know, this is it, this is happening. You can do this. The next question is how? And you say, like this. These are the tools, these are the ideas, these are the methods you can use, and then we can transform things. And I believe, you know, although we're in a fairly dire state as a planet, if we can get sufficient people moving, it's like I said, if everybody moves one step and stamps on the ground, the earth shakes, you know, and that's it. One stamp doesn't do it. Everybody doing it, we can move things.
Well, we're seeing the examples of crowd power everywhere, right? For both negative outcomes and positive outcomes, right? Whether it be the one you just referred to with all the thousands of kids, or people storming the Capitol, or people being swarming on a stock that they want to save. In the example of GameStop, people really do have the power, but they don't necessarily realize that. This is one of the reasons why we evolved the act, the exercise, the expression of the treaty, which is basically just saying, if we can have an agreement to seek agreement, to value agreement itself. Now, we may argue about which agreements are good ones and which ones are bad ones, but culturally, like that, you know, time you hearken back to when the village, you know, might welcome the stranger, you know, with open arms. Obviously, some of the strangers are good and some of the strangers are bad and all of that. But you know, we could have the ability, if we establish more of a culture of agreement and less of a culture of conflict, we might end up with more agreement overall. Is sort of the idea.
Oh, completely. You know, I think we're harking back that thing about the rules of hospitality. You know, it was like, I mean, now you say, oh, well, of course, if you welcome a stranger, you might be getting a bad guy. But the essence of the time, and of course, you did get terrible things happening. But by and large, the guy knocks on your door. I'm a traveler, you know, and you don't immediately assume, okay, he's come to rob the house. You know, he may have done, of course, but it's a two-way street. The rule was we look after strangers, and the rule was strangers better behave. You know, and then it sustains. As soon as you start to break it, as soon as you say no, that's not the case, you have disagreement, you have fragmentation. And you have disruption. So that society has it's the unspoken rules in a strange way that make it work.
Well, it's the unspoken and the spoken, right? If we talk about Benjamin Ferencz and his whole life being about law over war, agreement is not law, custom is not law, right?
No,
But those unspoken understandings and all of that, they're part of the coda of a culture, not just the laws that are written on the books, right?
100%. 100%. I agree entirely. And whilst it's daunting, I love the idea of the word agreement has such a power to it. I think it's you could leave the sound of it, the shape of it. It's like a pulling together. It's an encompassing kind of sense, and that's where we've got to get the world to go away from just natural natural sort of spontaneous fragmentation to spontaneous agreement.
And when we brought up this question here, and I think, we'll round it out with this, is, one of our discoveries out of experimenting with this in social research type situations is that as people ask, is there enough? They start focusing in on the things they have not enough of because those are the things that are most relevant to people. Well, that's where their values are. And as they begin having a conversation with themselves about their values, and one of the biggest responses to is there enough is there enough for me? And am I enough? Am I up to the challenge? All of that stuff. But as people begin to get some greater sense of their own value structure, not just what mommy and daddy gave me, but what are my values and so on, they begin to have compassion for other people's values. And people have very, very different opinions. Like a conservative and a liberal who agree on nothing can agree on a value called fairness, for example. They might interpret what fairness means differently, but they can at least respect each other's sense of fairness. That's a commonality of value there.
It's true.
That's, I think, what we're pointing to.